This is the fourth day of this July 2026 seven-day session. And we will return to our text of the previous days, Zen Essence. And this was translated and edited by Thomas Cleary. There is some material here in the translator's afterword about this Wuzu. His well, it doesn't give dates. Let's assume it's around the 1100s. Wuzu had already reached middle age when he entered Zen under the tutelage of one of the Zen prodigies of the time, Baiyun, who became a Zen teacher at an unusually young age and passed away early. Baiyun sent Wuzu to run the mill operated by the Zen monastery in a town below the mountain on which the monastery was located. These giant Chinese, these Chan monasteries were huge complexes of owning a mill operated by it. They had a big one would have a health clinic, schools. Quite different from what I've heard about the Japanese monasteries. It is said that whenever monks would come down the mountain snooping around, Wuzu would scandalize them by flirting with the young women who came to the mill. He was later known for a skill in teaching that was unique in his time, using graphic stories, colorful metaphors, earthy poetry, profound abstractions, and so forth. That's enough for that. We left off yesterday with just a short thing about where he says, "It is not permitted for a general to see great peace, but a general may establish great peace." And I took that, one way to understand that is that Kensho does not transform one's life, but it does establish the basis for transforming one's life. The basis is a no basis, meaning it's seeing that there is nothing of enduring substance, and especially the self. Just a short one here. To practice Zen, first you must obtain directions to the ultimate goal. Hearing sound and seeing form are inconceivable. That is, beyond conceptualizing. Hearing the rain, hearing a crow. There's no conceptualizing that's needed. It's direct. What's in Buddhism is called the first nen. Nen is a very difficult word to translate. There was the the assistant of the Roshi, one of the temples I trained at in Japan, came to me. She was American. She was beyond fluent in English and very much in Japanese. And she said, "How do you guys translate Nen?" And I guess the best I've come up with is it's a thought form. It's easier to just describe how it works. So what they call the first Nen is the direct experience, the direct perception. Ah, ah. Or pop, pop. The second Nen is very commonly thinking about that, putting a name to it, identifying it. A third Nen would be then thinking about putting a name on it, and then it goes on and on, adding layers to the thing. But in the first Nen, there's nothing required. We just hear, we just see, we just feel. One of my favorite admonitions in Zen is, I don't know who said this, but just cut off successive Nens. Just cut off successive Nen. That's all you need to do. The direct sound, the direct hearing, that's it. Don't add anything. Don't go down that path, that exit from the throughway. And then he continues, from the eternal sky, every night the moon shines on every home. Its reflection descends into a quiet pool. This says so much. From the eternal sky, every night, the moon shines on every home. There's the last koan in the Blue Cliff record is something very similar. Every branch of coral reflects the bright moon. Every one of us. It can be so hard to think of ourselves as reflecting the bright moon when we're mucking through all the stuff that it parades through the mind about ourselves. But it's true. The next master here is the famous Zen master Yuan Wu, who is the editor of the Blue Cliff record, which we just quoted, the 100th case in the Blue Cliff record. I'm just going to pluck out a little bit here in the afterword about Yuan Wu. Like his teacher, Wu Zu, Yuan Wu was highly critical of deteriorated Zen practice. He noted that many intellectuals and educated people study Zen as a hobby and conversation piece. Zen was used as a status symbol and became the basis for a great deal of snobbery because of its honored position in Chinese culture. I would say that the modern, or the contemporary version of that is the commercialization of the word Zen. there's some little momentary program on YouTube or something where it shows some scene of nature, and it says, "Enjoy the Zen." Yuan Wu insisted on the right purpose and inspiration for Zen practice, particularly recommending the exercise of looking at death to clarify the will. As far as I know, well, in another Zen, or excuse me, in another Dharma practice, this can be a feature of it, is to, going way back to ancient India, going into the graveyard and contemplating a corpse to wake you up, basically, about where we're all headed. But I don't know of anything exactly like that in Zen. I've never heard of anything where it's so direct of an exercise of of verses or chanting or something that's just dedicated to death or dying. There's plenty in the koans about really that comes down to death and dying, but especially the continuous dying that's going on all the time, every millisecond, as the molecules of our body and our thoughts and feelings and perceptions are all in flux. This is this continuous death, dying. I think the substitute for the exercise of looking at death is attending a funeral, a memorial service. We've had more than usual lately of those in the Sangha. And it can clarify the will, puts into perspective what matters. For most people, it may assume great clarity and become a priority for a little while, and then it slips away over time, and we go on about our daily business, largely denying the fact that it's just a matter of time for each one of us. Back to the section on Yuan Wu. Human lives go along with circumstances. It is not necessary to reject activity and seek quiet. Just make yourself inwardly empty while outwardly harmonious. Then you will be at peace in the midst of frenetic activity in the world. It's not necessary to reject activity. It's not necessary to become a monk. It's not necessary to go into a hermitage. Although for some people who have a strong affinity, there's that word again, affinity with solitude, may well feel drawn to do that. The masters, quite a few of the masters we read, did that for a period of time, and then often came down from the mountain to teach. Just make yourself inwardly empty. Well, how do you do that? Let's look at it. How do you make yourself inwardly empty? You stop dwelling in your thoughts. How do you stop dwelling in your thoughts? You put your attention on the practice you have. The habit force of our thoughts, our incessant, discriminating, discursive thoughts is so strong that we need something to take the mind off them. We need an escape hatch to get out of that morass. And that's where the practice, the breath, the koan, shikantaza. That's how we make ourselves inwardly empty. And then at the same time, when we're not dragging a sense of self around, are lost in our thoughts about ourselves, then we become more harmonious. We harmonize more with others and with circumstances and conditions. But you can all sense that as sesshin goes on. As we spend less time dwelling in our thoughts, there's a fluidity that arises naturally. Here's another one. Zen teachers of true vision and great liberation have made changes in method along the way to prevent people from sticking to names and forms and falling into rationalizations. If that was true in the East Asian countries, China, Japan, Korea, how much more so might that be called for in this switch to a whole different Western culture? When Chan became Zen in Japan, the Japanese didn't keep chanting in Chinese. Nor did the Koreans keep chanting in Chinese. And so, thanks to our founder, we realized a long time ago that it's only suitable that we translate at least some of our chants into English. The two dharani that we chant, the Daishin and the Shosaimyo, these are based on sounds. I guess I've heard that somewhere someone translated them, but the power is from the sound of it. A dharani, either one of these two and others, a dharani is a string of mantras, and that's where it derives its power. So we stick to the Japanese with that. Of course, it is a phonetic rendering into English, into Roman characters from the Japanese. So the Japanese must have found a way, although the written characters in Japanese and Chinese are the same. Let me not go too far off the reservation here talking about that stuff. Over the course of centuries, Yuan Wu said, Zen has branched out into different schools with individual methods, but the purpose is still the same, to point directly to the human mind. Another one by this master Yuan Wu. What is most difficult to rectify is half-baked Zen, where you stick to quiet stillness and consider this the ultimate treasure, keeping it in your heart, radiantly aware of it all the time, carrying around a bunch of mixed up knowledge and understanding, claiming to have vision and to have attained the approval of a Zen master, just increasing your egoism. Sticking to quiet stillness. I touched on this yesterday, the day before, about the danger of sinking into the honey sweet allure of quietness on day 4 or 5 especially. It's hard not to. It's just so luscious when we are able to get above the clouds of thought and can really appreciate this stillness. But he's warning about getting attached to it, to thinking that we have to contrive our circumstances, our conditions, to be quiet. He's really warning about clinging to whatever insights we've had, thinking that we've arrived. The koans are full of these warnings not to settle for whatever attainments we've had. My favorite words of warning from the Chinese is, having some attainment is the jackal's yelp. Having no attainment is the lion's roar. Forgetting about what you think you've gotten. Leave it behind. Move on. If it's true, our true attainment, you don't need to hold on to it. You certainly don't need to think about it. Think of yourself as having had this attainment. Here's one with the subtitle, Zen Mind. In those who attain Zen, mental machinations disappear, vision and action are forgotten, and there are no subjective views. Again, here we're plowing into a lot of abstract words, so let me just see if I can offer some insight into this. Vision and action are forgotten. That is, we forget about whatever visions or what kind of action we're doing. We're beyond that. And there are no subjective views. This is a big one. There's a phrase in Buddhism called subjective emotional consciousness. Subjective, that is, believing that the way we see things is necessarily the way they are. Or to put another word, it's getting our own personal, subjective filters over things. It requires a lot of watchfulness, not to take for granted that we're seeing things as they are. A few years ago, I was called on for jury duty here in Rochester, and as part of the whole process, the judge, I addressed us all and said, now, can you promise to not bring any bias into your judgment, into your decision? And I raised my hand and I said, but you know about unconscious bias. And I wasn't trying to be smart. It was hard to say, oh yes, I can be sure I won't have any bias. Who knows what layers of unconscious bias any of us have? But he just kind of waved it away. I mean, he was very impressive, a really fine man, and I'm sure he knew what I was talking about. But we'd have no juries if we claim to have no, if they only wanted people with zero bias. So the trick is to try to be vigilant. How might I be distorting things here? What am I bringing out of my conditioning into how I see this matter? And then he addresses the transparency that we can grow into through long practice. He says Zen practitioners just remain free and are imperceptible to anyone, either would-be supporters or would-be antagonists. They walk on the bottom of the deepest ocean, uncontaminated, with free minds, acting normally, indistinguishable from the average person. This is something that we all can aspire to, is to become invisible, with no Zen stink. There's something in the three pillars about, they were talking about Yasutani Roshi, and how he would just, he had very much a lot of this, where he would ride the subways in his sneakers. That might seem like, of course, why not? But in Japan, for a senior priest to wear sneakers would be quite unusual. Acting normally, nothing special. In Zen, there's this old saying, just be ordinary. Stop trying to be somebody special. We so easily want to try to find ways to be special. He says they sense these. This is and now this is the opposite. People who are not practicing right, they sense the slightest thing as mountainous. Anything that seems to cause obstruction, they immediately push away. Well, this is basic Zen practice, is to neither reject nor cling to anything. We're not trying to push our thoughts away, and we certainly aren't clinging to them. So how do we neither push away our thoughts nor cling to them? Yuan Wu continues, if you want to attain intimate realization of Zen, first of all, don't grasp at it. The great treasury of Zen has always been open and clear. It has always been the source of power for all your actions. There was a book when I began practice in around 1970 about Zen called Open Secret. Don't grasp. Grasping, questioning, a koan say, questioning is not grasping. It's wondering. Wondering is not grasping. Breathing full absorption in the breath is not grasping. In other words, and it's actually an antidote to grasping. Some of us can spend years grasping at awakening, enlightenment, instead of just wondering what the koan is, really genuinely, sincerely questioning, or just following the breath, or shikantaza. All of these things are so as not to grasp these practices. Then he says, everything comes from your own heart. This is what one ancient called bringing out the family treasure. Everything comes from your own heart. I once went with a few other Sangha members, Malaroshi and others. We drove down to Ithaca to see an exhibition of Hakuin's paintings. And there was one that was particularly dramatic, big, bold calligraphy. And the translation was, it consisted of two ideographs, honesty and heart. Honesty and heart. Which is the opposite of relying on techniques. It is such a trap, and such a common trap, in sesshin, outside sesshin, to think we have to come up with the perfect technique. Yes, there's a place for getting the form right, getting our posture right, having been instructed in an effective way of working with the breath or working with the koan. But that's just basic stuff. Too many people after that just keep obsessing about little details of technique. Can't tell you how many times when I was my early years of sesshin, where Roshi Kapleau would say, technique is for the world of technology, not for spiritual practice. This should be really a relief. We don't have to figure out exactly how to practice. We can trust our basic aspiration, our heart, to be sincere. That's enough. Basic technique is helpful, but not to carry it on and on and on. Here's another one. This is longer than most of the entries here. This one by Yuan Wu. Let go of all your previous imaginings, opinions, interpretations, worldly knowledge, intellectualism, egoism, and competitiveness. Well, how? Easier said than done, but how? Well, we already covered that through complete absorption in the practice. We don't have to list all these things with check boxes. Imaginings, okay, check. Opinions, maybe not yet. This is the genius of this simple practice, this tradition of Zen. Is just do it with your whole heart. Give everything to the practice you're working on, and everything else flows from that. You will find, just by and by, you will find less bondage to imaginings and opinions, interpretations, and knowledge, and intellectualism, and egoism, yes, and competitiveness. It's one-stop shopping Zen practice. And then another one. The way is arrived at by enlightenment. The first priority is to establish resolve. It is no small matter to step directly from the bondage of the ordinary person into transcendent experience of the realm of sages. It requires that your mind be firm as steel to cut off the flow of birth and death. Trust your original real nature. Not see anything at all as existing inside or outside yourself. That is, not succumbing to ideas of inside and outside. And make your heart perfectly clear without any obstruction, so all actions and endeavors emerge from the fundamental. Well, how do we do that? You all know. You've been doing it. It's this one practice. I especially look at this clause, trust your original real nature, your true nature. That's the breath. That's the koan. Trust. So much of this comes down to trust. Some people are a little uncomfortable with faith. I remember when I first got to Zen practice, I'd never been exposed to any kind of religion, and faith just made me a little squeamish. It doesn't anymore. But yeah, make it trust then. Trust only mu. Trust only who. Trust the question, trust the breath, and only that. Whatever you do, don't trust your thoughts. They will betray you every time. In this work that we're doing here, again, there's a place for thinking through problems, planning, but not in here. Trust only your own practice. Have nothing to do with your thoughts. One more. If people find fault with you and try to put you in a bad light, wrongly slandering and vilifying you, just step back and observe yourself. Don't harbor any dislike. Don't enter into any contests. And don't get upset, angry, or resentful. Boy, this was in the 11th century. It could be referring directly to social media. All of the garbage that we can find about ourselves if we want to. He's talking about non-reactivity. Just step back and observe yourself. Well, observe yourself, what does that mean? It means don't get caught up in all that. Don't get caught up in the story. Notice your own tendency to react. Don't go there. Best thing is to have nothing to do with it. But I'm always told by people, especially with families, that there's a lot of good that comes from social media. A lot of ways for us to connect. Don't harbor any dislike. Don't enter into any contest. Don't react to things. People at the center told me that there is this hallucination out there about me, that I had to step away from the center because of misconduct. And the only way I can understand that is that I've spoken out in more than a few teishos about teacher misconduct, and somehow this algorithm just combed through and just scrambled it and said that I'm the one who was guilty of misconduct. We actually, Zen Center lawyers sent a cease and desist letter to Google, and I haven't even paid attention to it. People say it's good luck. And then they just, to follow up, just cut right through it and be as if you never heard or saw it. Eventually, malevolent pests will disappear of themselves. If you contend with them, that is, if you react, then a bad name will bounce back and forth with never an end in sight. There's the famous story, usually attributed to Hakuin, but it was Hakuin's teacher, Shido Munan, who had a young woman with her parents confront him. She had a newborn baby, and she had told her parents that he was the father. And he listened, and he said, "So desu ka? Is that so?" And they put the baby in his arms, and he took care of the baby. They say for a year, getting milk from neighboring farm and so forth. And after a year, this young woman was absolutely stricken with remorse, and she told her parents, and they came to him. No doubt they were groveling, prostrating with remorse and asking forgiveness, and his response was, "Is that so?" Our time is up. We'll stop and recite the 4 vows.